Finally got your first leadership gig, loving the new role, but feeling the pressure of your new responsibilities and all that expectation to perform? Well, don't worry, you're not alone. Crossing the chasm from a technical role to leadership, from doing stuff to managing and leading people is the toughest challenge any leader must make. Welcome to the Human Edge Show, the podcast dedicated to help you do just that, successfully cross the doing to leading chasm. Campbell Such here, Chief Chasm Crossing Guide. I've made all the mistakes so you don't have to. I want to help you learn those lessons much more easily by sharing my experiences and talking with brilliant people who have already figured it out. You'll get great actionable tips, strategies, and techniques to make the transition so much easier and faster for you. Now let's get to it. Welcome to another episode of the Human Edge Show. Today, I'm privileged to have Dave Howden from Umbrellar with me. Dave, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Kia ora, morning, evening, whichever time you're listening to this. Hello.
Yeah. It's great to have you on the show. Dave Howden is the Chief Executive Officer at Umbrellar and MyCSP.io, Microsoft Partner of the Year. He is an experienced senior executive building businesses on behalf of and alongside financial sponsors within the tech sector. Dave has over 20 years of operational, steering committee, and private equity experience governing engineering technology strategies in some of the largest IT and telecommunications companies in the world. He's known for leading, some would say ringleading, commercially viable, game-changing implementations of technology, monetizing and productizing platforms, and motivating teams for technology transformation. He actively leads in the tech industry because technology, whether it's cloud, artificial intelligence, intelligent networks, or IoT, when used and implemented correctly, dramatically improves business outcomes, lives, and economies. So, Dave, welcome. It's great to have you on the show.
I'll tell you what, that bio is a mouthful, isn't it? If there's anything that comes from this podcast, I need to do a bit of work on refining and pointing that back at something that's more concise.
I think it comes across really well, but we can always look at it right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Look, just to kick things off, Dave, could you tell us something that not too many people would know about you?
Oh, yeah. Totally not professionally related. So back in my misspent youth, I was born and raised as a guy out in the child out in the villages of the UK, and I come from a family that were pretty good at athletics. My father used to play for Leicester City back in the day. But that's not about me, that's about him. But as part of that, I used to do a lot of athletics when I was younger. So I was the under 21s English high jump champion for the UK for 3 years on the bounce, and still hold the record today for high jump in the UK for under 21s.
Fosbury flop, I presume.
The Fosbury flop, yeah. So I was tall, lanky. I weigh a little bit now, but used to pretty much didn't weigh anything, and was pretty good at throwing myself backwards over a bar. So, then I found girls and alcohol, and then it all changed after that.
As it does, the athletics took a little bit of a back seat.
Yeah. Oh, that was that injury, and just growing up and realizing that you got to pay a mortgage, and and actually I was okay, but I wasn't that good.
Yeah. Well, great achievement though. Yeah. And interesting that your dad played for Leicester City. So was that aspirational for you, or was that just kind of one of those things that just sort of was there because your dad always did that?
So I can get away with this because he's 12,000 miles away in a different country, but it's a game that I don't enjoy. I don't enjoy soccer and football. I never have. And I think that's, he was pretty frustrated by that. Like taking me out to the football pitch every Saturday and Sunday morning, trying to get me to play with local teams. I'm like, I don't want to run around the field kicking a ball. It wasn't something I was that interested in. So, he was probably a little bit disappointed on that, but I can get away with that because he's not here.
It's funny, isn't it, with fathers and sons? I've always surfed, and Ollie, my son, has tried it a few times, but he just never taken to it. And he's the opposite. He's a guy with the ball in hand as a cricket bowler or as a football player. So it's interesting how things go when you look.
Yeah.
Just to step into the leadership side of things, Dave, can you just kind of cast your mind back to your early days in leadership, and what initiated you making the move from wherever you were into a leadership role. And can you just talk through some of the challenges that you faced, how you felt, and some of the ideas that new leaders moving into a leadership role might be able to make use of in their first steps and forays into leadership?
Yeah. So firstly, Campbell, thanks for inviting me on this podcast, because I think the narrative that we've had before this in terms of prepping has kind of sparked a lot of thoughts from like the early days, and looking at the business that I lead now. Sometimes I can always do better, right? But trying to like live those lessons and bring them through. But the thing that really kind of throws me back was you've got these two compartments of leadership, right? One which has got a tag on it and one which hasn't. And I always found that I was in the best leadership positions I've always been in, as where I've been leading through osmosis, but without the badge. As in, I'm doing some awesome work. I've got a team of people who are around me, but don't work for me necessarily, but they're influenced by an idea, or they're influenced by a direction, or we're trying to solve a gnarly problem, or we're being entrepreneurial and doing a skunkworks project. And you've got leadership, and you're doing leadership, and leadership is happening, but it's happening in its purest form, because it's not driven by an authority. It's driven by genuine intent from the people around you to follow, with you acting as the glue that pulls these guys together. And what's not lost on me is the fact that when you then take that great like subculture of leadership and then go, right, now you're the boss, people move to a stereotype of what a boss is, and the leader kind of disconnects themselves from what they were doing to now, I've got to be a leader, therefore they're doing things by a textbook as opposed to doing things by what they were doing before. And the team go, well, this is how I interact with a boss, which is more around to kind of how you'd act in corporate culture of covering your back and, sticking to policy and not being creative and all those things that kind of would die away. Yeah. So the reason I'm saying this is that my first step into leadership was driving those kind of projects, like seeing a problem, tackling it head on, trying to fix it, being recognized for it, taking people on the journey, and just being a good employee at the time, right? And this is like, when I was in my teenage years, just doing stuff and taking people on the journey. That's, for me, the most purest form of leadership. The trick is you then get recognized by the company or the business or the organization for that, and they give you management accountability and HR responsibilities and all these things that could mean you're the boss. That is the transition which I think 95% of people start to trip on. I've seen it. I've been there. I've done it. And, I know actually I much prefer the other side of the organization, which is the skunkworks piece, but you can't run an organization of the size that we do at Umbrella with skunkworks projects. We need some form of structure. But how do you create that sense of natural leadership without it becoming a authoritative leadership style, which is totally alien from the culture that we want to create. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm answering your question, but I'm kind of indicating that leadership is something you do, not something you necessarily give it a title of. You can't give it a title and be a leader. I'm trying to connect back to those core parts of that. I think is just such the biggest challenge for new leaders today, and people that have leadership qualities but are trying to transition into a corporate structure.
Right. So yeah, that's really interesting. So what did you learn from your missteps down that path of going from that intrinsic leadership piece to official leadership piece that might help someone that's listening to this consider some of the things that might stop them from dropping into this authoritarian way of doing things, and the team from suddenly being separated from the leader rather than being together? What would you suggest?
Oh, look, there are a couple of things. Staring at yourself in the mirror and giving yourself the pep talk about whether you're ready for this world in leadership is really quite important. A lot of people, and I was one of these, will look at the paycheck and they'll look at the title and they'll look at the possible impact that this role could have, and they'll go, cool, yeah, you're in. But as you get more senior within a leadership role, it's a thankless task with high levels of accountability where there's no excuses. You own the problem. You don't own the success. It's it's not. It's actually, you've got to be highly, highly self-motivated to go, you know what, when it goes really, really well, that's on the boys and the girls in the organization. But, you miss the number, or you have a big incident, or there's a business risk that can't be managed. That's on you. And you've got no vent for it, right? And it's really making sure you're looking at the mirror and going, are you ready for that level of accountability to hold yourself accountable for it? And if you're not, then actually that's okay, because it is okay. Now, having that conversation with yourself can be quite hard, because it's all, hindsight is 2020. You need to be able to look back and go, right, okay, well, what did I screw up here? What I'm indicating is the biggest learning that I've had is that there are no excuses. You're ultimately responsible for everything, accountable for everything. And you can't necessarily get away with the same narrative that you had in your non-leadership role, which was, I'm too busy, haven't got enough time, there's not enough resources. They just will disappear. You can't have that conversation anymore, because that you're actually paid to deliver the outcomes regardless, and manage that tension within inside of your organization. So, how do you do that? Find someone who's been there before.
Yeah.
Right. Because I can look in the mirror now, because I've been there, and I've been there, right? I've had the excuses, and I've felt the consequence of having the excuses, which is things aren't going well, and you end up you burn out, or you make a career change or whatever. But it takes a few of those, come to Jesus moments with yourself to realize, actually, no, I'm now ready for this. But you can shortcut it, right? You can get there first. So I'll kind of round this up. If I was an 18 or 20-year-old me again, looking at, am I ready for leadership? I'd be asking myself a couple of questions. One, do you want this job genuinely? Do you understand what it's about? Two, can you do this job? If you're saying you want it, can you do it? Are you prepared for it? And three, once you're in, right? You've got to give this a 2-3 year run to learn, but also realize that it is going to be bloody difficult, and get the other side of that, then you're all good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, and then you mentioned just before about finding someone who's been there to be able to benefit from their experience. Is that something that that you've had some good experiences with in the past, and when you haven't done that it's made it more difficult? And how do you go about finding the person or the people to help you, coaches, mentors, whatever that might be, your boss? So
there are people that have been in before you, right? There's people that have led before you have led. As in, I'm not talking about you, Campbell, I mean individuals, right? There are people that have been there before. Nothing promotes ego or reflection on someone else's career by helping someone else go through that pain process. So if there is a good leader around you that you can see has got time for you, just ask the question. They will want to give back.
Yeah.
Right? They genuinely, and I don't, this is not true for everybody, right? But a good leader will want to mentor someone. They want to pass it on. They want to take the lessons. They want to make sure that those lessons are learned ahead of time versus being the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. It may not be your direct manager. It may not be anybody that you know inside your organization, but to find someone who you respect, who's got a few more years under your belt than you have maybe, that's got a similar but a diverse thinking pattern in terms of, there's similarities, but they don't necessarily be related to your industry, and go, hey, look, do you mind if we just meet up for a coffee every 2 or 3 weeks? I want to throw my challenges around. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm feeling. I've got a guy that's not performing too well. Can you help me? How do I go on a coaching program? What do I need to do? And that realization that a mentor is not there to do your job for you. A mentor is there to support your thinking. But realizing, again, if you've looked in the mirror and said you're accountable and you're going to own this, then you actually owe it to yourself to make sure you've got all the ingestion points and all the noise coming, right? So what books are you reading? Who are you following? Who are you talking to? What's your reference point for what good looks like? It's not all on you, right? There's we sometimes it's seen as like leadership is, it's all the individual. It's not, right? It's, I take great bits from, how this guy leads, or from someone at school, one of my teachers, how they spoke to me, or how one of my team kind of has empathy for another colleague, all these little bits, pulling it together. But finding an experienced mentor who can just give you a sense of grounding, I think is really, really quite important. And most people have got them in their lives. And if they don't, there are organizations out there that can provide you, like the local business council support groups, Business North Harbour, which was one that Umbrellar is associated with, have an open mentor program. they'll connect you to with what, a CEO in another organization that wants to give back to the industry.
Yeah.
So, there is definite support out there for those that are humble enough to take it, because it can be quite, thought provoking to say, oh, I've just got a new job, aren't I great? Actually, no, you're not. You've just got the job. You've not proven anything yet. So, go and tool yourself up.
Yeah. There's a great analogy about tools, which came from Diana Taylor, and that was that a mentor of hers, a wise person in her history, had said to her, look, you're about to go from doing stuff to leading and managing people. Your doing stuff toolbox is fine, and it's got you to where you are now. But guess what? The leadership toolbox, it's completely empty, and you have to fill it with new tools. So you need some help to get the tools in that toolbox and be able to get across that gap and succeed. So
absolutely. Yeah, and that was me, to be honest. I mean, I was working in a sales team, and then became head of business development at British Telecom, and I was a really good sales guy, ex-engineer, technical, could go toe to toe with CIOs on big gnarly technical challenges that we're having, and I really enjoyed that. But then I was leading a team of 7 salespeople and was useless at it, because they've just got more years. They've got bigger beards, longer hair. They were more. I was like 24, 25, leading salespeople that were like 50, 60 years old. No respect for the young guy coming in the room.
Yeah.
You learn it, you learn it the hard way. If I'd not gone through those steps, then I wouldn't be where I am today. So you do need to go through it, but could I have shortcut the learnings? And what is a classic example at the time of a leader who gave me the authority, but not necessarily supporting the empty toolbox.
Yeah.
And there is an obligation on me. I should have filled the toolbox up quicker. That's on me, because I never looked at myself in the mirror. Is there also an obligation on the leaders to make sure that there's an understanding of expectation, and that you're indicating, look, you're going from a player to a player manager. You're going to need to think very, very differently here. And I know that was a conversation that didn't happen, but that's kind of helped me shape the leaders that I've got in Umbrella today.
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges is we tend to, and perhaps you're a classic example in that situation. You were a top salesperson, very successful, and then you pick your top player out of your team, your top high jumper, and you make them the coach or the leader of the whole team. And a couple of things can go wrong there. One is they're not the right, leadership isn't in what they want to do or what they're good at. They've probably never had a run into learning what that might mean, and all those things that you talked about, the realities of leadership and the accountability of it. And you end up in that role, and then you're left to sink or swim. And so many people in those roles, whether they come out of sales like you did into sales management, whether they come out of a technical role into technical management, into managing technical teams, same thing, sink or swim. It can be a real nightmare, and you suddenly realize that you really, really enjoyed being on the tools. Yep. And the only way to get back to the tools is to leave the company. So you've lost your best person, and you've affected the team because morale's down because the leader wasn't leading properly, and then they've gone. So you just mentioned before about the leader's responsibility when they put a new leader into a role. What would you say to other leaders based on your experience that could really help them help their new leader that they've either brought in from outside or promoted through from the team into being much more likely to succeed and far less likely to fail, and to succeed more quickly as well?
So
that was a long rambling question, I know.
No. I think there's a precursor to that, which is the situation that leaders find themselves in when they're actually being asked to, or need to, because of necessity, appoint someone as a new leader, right? So if you look at this, remove the personalities and the people and look at it from just a budget perspective, it's genuinely less impactful for the business to promote from within and backfill a cheaper role than it is to go and bring an experienced manager in. Last time I checked, businesses are in business to make money, and the short-term thinking, whilst it's true for the immediate quarter or year that you're in that it's cheaper to do that, the long-term impacts of thinking short when you're bringing management or new leaders in can be devastating in the long term. So there's a symptom of commercials inside an organization, which is you're growing as an organization. You need to create more leadership or grow the size of the team. Cheapest way to do it find someone that's sticking their hand up, create them as a manager, and then backfill with a cheaper resource to grow the size of the team. Fail, all written over it, because that's creating the scenario that we're talking around now, which is best player sticks their hand up because they want to be part of the growth story, and the toolkit is empty.
Yep.
So the reason I'm prefacing it with that scenario is that actually it takes strength from leadership from day one of how we're going to grow this business. And if we're going to bring new people in, do we have a culture that can take, and a skills progression pathway or training programs or appropriate mentorship toolboxes that can prepare leaders for leadership?
Yeah, good. Because
if we haven't, we have to bring people in who can. Although it kills the business. Again, I've been there, I've done it. And it would I do it again the way that I did it, 4 or 5 years ago? Absolutely not. So it takes the leadership of the organization at the time to have the foresight to know, look, guys, we're on a growth curve here. We are going to need to bring in more people at the most appropriate time. What is our strategy? Grow from within, bring people in external, or have a program that gives people the tools internally, and then when the opportunities create themselves, then they're already prepared to make the jump across the chasm. But leadership, again, it's that you're planning 12 months, 18 months out. You can't prepare a leader in under 6 to 12 months. It's just not how it works. So prefacing that with, how do you kind of make the jump between not being a leader and being a leader? The key thing for me is making sure that you're 100% setting the expectation with these individuals. Have the conversation straight up, as in, this is not a promotion which sees you get paid more to do the same job. We have position descriptions for a reason. We have responsibilities and races and lead to cash processes for a reason. So if everyone knows where to play on the pitch, that's cool. Realize that you're now playing on a different part of the field. It's no better, it's no worse. It's just a different part of the field. Do you 100% understand what that means and what the expectations of you are? If those conversations have been had, and the leader that's appointing that role is not overly stretching to help the person, and what I mean by help is doing it for them. Doing a job for someone is not helping them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's unempowering them. It's taking away their choice to improve. So if you've had the conversation and you're not leaning in, doing their job for them, then the individual who's the new leader has the choice. They can either step into the shoes of it and realize that they now know what's expected of them, or they can go, actually, you know what? No, I'm not ready, but I could be ready in 6 months' time. And it just gives them the choice, right? But the hard conversation has to happen right from the choice to bring a new leader into the organizational structure somewhere. The hard conversation has to happen then. Are you ready? Do you know what's expected of you? Because I'm going to hold you accountable for that. Here's all the tools available to you. I'm not going to do your job for you, and therefore, are you ready? Do you know what the job is? Can you do it? Okay, let's get to work. That's great. And then it's on the individual to make the choice, right?
Yeah.
And that's when leadership really starts to show, because the individual that's ready will step in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be clear about where they need the help.
And that points a lot at the culture of the organization too, or if not the culture of the organization, at least the maturity and understanding of the leader or the manager that's appointing that new person into that role, and has given them a runway in rather than throwing them in the deep end of the swim, just push them in the pool. It's pretty challenging, right? And a lot of organizations don't do that. There is another wrinkle to it too, which is, if you look at the Gallup stats, research that's been done, only 1 in 10 people make good natural leaders, and another 2 with the right support and coaching and guidance and mentoring can be really good leaders. The other 7 out of 10, according to Gallup, should never be leaders, and actually where they're best suited is to be technical experts.
Yeah.
How do you go about, as a leader of leaders, identifying those natural leaders and the ones that can be coached and supported into a role, as opposed to someone whose true role really, where they're really going to get the most benefit, where they're going to feel the best, where they're going to grow and be able to deliver the most for the organization and for themselves, is actually in a technical role? How do you make that? How do you see which way someone should go, or help them to see which way they should go, Because often we think we might want leadership, but it's driven by status and money and, other things, as opposed to, gee, if I get into that role, what I now just realized is, hey, I'm not on the tools anymore, and I love that stuff, and I'm struggling not to be doing it.
So it's a good question. I think one that's matured over the course of the last 15 or so years with the introduction of agile working, and which is not necessarily linked to how corporates used to run from when me and you first got into business, before when agile was a thing. And the reason I mention that is that we're not an overly agile business. We have, teams that work in agile formats, but there's still a structure to the organization, and we've still got a big waterfall mission as such. Though the reason I mention agile is that it compartmentalizes your technical capability to lead parts of an organization because of what you're really, really good at. It doesn't. It's a lateral leadership as opposed to a vertical leadership. So you can run in agile. You can run a chapter, which means you're an expert in this, and there's another person in the organization who's also an expert in that, but you've got different parts of the business that you work in. You can create a commonality and lead that chapter of individuals, for example. So it doesn't mean that the individual needs to take on accountability for, the P&L of the organization and do HR and all this kind of stuff. But they can dip their toe in to structuring a leadership style, which is bringing people together for a common good, rallying against a common goal, staying accountable for what you're going to do, sharing information, learning and development, all of these things. But it doesn't give you the tag. Because the tag is, you are, the CEO of this part of the business, right? So Agile really does help initially identify these great leaders because it's all kind of common goal based. So you get a structure to what I was talking about at the start of the podcast, which was this skunk works mindset. But now with Agile, there's a bit more structure to it. So you can be a practice lead, or you can be part of a DevOps cluster, or you can run a chapter of individuals. You get those opportunities because of what you're technically good at. And everyone's still on the tools, which is awesome, but you're stepping into that to that void. So, if there are organizations out there that have an interest in, Agile, I'd just do a bit of research on it, but look at it in terms of that. How can you create passion projects for individuals where 3 or 4 people across the business need to work together? Who naturally rises to the leadership position? Who's the one that's reporting back? Who's the one that's keeping everyone accountable? Right. Okay, cool. Now you can see the shoots of natural leadership coming up. Yeah. Okay, great. And it's a conversation. Where do you want to take your career? And then it's a skills first, remuneration status after, as opposed to the business needs a leader who wants it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the one with the big ego and not necessarily the ability to run the team might end up running it, and it ends up causing all sorts of problems, right? And that sounds really powerful, and it goes, as you said, it goes back to your original idea around that. Without all of the official stuff that sits around leadership, you can see the people in the organization who do start to stand out as leaders.
One question, but flip the other way around. If you were to take a position description. If I'm sat here and I need a CFO, right? I'm like, okay, cool. So the business needs a CFO. Who wants to do it? And then the whole market put their hand up and go, I reckon I can do that. That's great. But if I flip the question around and go, the business needs a CFO, I think you can do it because you've shown these capabilities. You've put like the power back within those individuals to go, look, the business needs something, and I've seen you do these things that are natural signs of leadership. Now, there may be a disconnect between what the job description and what you're doing right now, right? But I think there's a pathway we can get you there. Now, isn't that a really great cultural story to say, I've got something that the business needs, I can see promise in you. This is what it means to actually do it, and we're going to get you on the journey, as opposed to 100 egos coming into the room saying, I can do it, when you've not even experienced how these people operate.
Yeah. Yeah, and they haven't experienced it either, and they might find that they hate it when they get in there, or that that's not what they want to do, or all that. Now that's great. One of the things that happens, you take your first forays into leadership, and you start to build your leadership toolbox, and you have a team of people that you're leading and managing, and you've got HR responsibility and all the other stuff, and you're building your toolbox. And that goes really well. You're directly responsible for getting things done. through other people, which is, the whole leadership management thing. But then what happens is a little bit further down the track at some point, as the organization grows, or perhaps if you change roles, you end up going from leading people that are doing things to get things done into a step up into leading leaders. And my experience is the biggest change you ever make is taking that first step into leadership, crossing the chasm from doing stuff to managing and leading people. But one of the other really big changes is going from managing people doing things to managing leaders. What's been your experience in that, Dave? And what would you suggest to people that are going through that transition that might make it easier for them to understand what that means and what's involved and how it's different from what they've been doing before?
Yeah, it's really easy to be hypocritical when you're bringing a leadership team together that's going to lead other parts of your organization for you. And it's also really hard to let go sometimes, right? When you are an individual that's been running the Skunk Works project and you've got 4 or 5 people who are working towards a common goal, you've got direct line of sight of everything, which is awesome. You can't scale, a 500-person organization based on direct line of sight. Once you get above 90 people, I think it's a common number, an organization above 90 people, there's a natural disconnect between an executive and organization and other parts of the business. You can't remember that many names, and it's just becomes that natural point where there's a breaking point of how you split an organization up. And when you're leading on a one-to-one basis, you read all the books and look at all of the things that you should do. And it's quite easy because you can check yourself because you can directly see what's going on. You're then going to create that sense of trust where actually I've got 7 people that work for me that are all leading teams of 10, 15 people. Are they delivering the message in the same way? What tools do they need to be able to do it? And am I holding them accountable for the standard of leadership that I expect? What I've found is the main difference between leading people versus leading leaders, or leading individuals who are individual contributors versus people that are leading leaders, is that you're holding them accountable for the leadership standard. You're not holding them accountable for the day-to-day tactics and the activities, which is different, right? So we have a saying at Umbrellar called SBI, so situation, behavior, impact. It's a common methodology that quite a few people use, but we SBI all the time. If you see a situation that's a behavior that's leading to an impact that's negative, we have to call it out really, really quickly. And that for leaders, that really means, look, there was an opportunity for you to give feedback and I didn't see you give feedback. Why was that? Are you uncomfortable in giving the feedback? Can we help you with a mechanism to give feedback? People turning up to late meetings, you just can't have that. It's all these little micro slippages start to cause it through. So to kind of circle this back through, the difference for me between leading individual contributors versus leading leaders is that you have to set the framework of what good looks like and hold them accountable to the framework for the standards that you hold yourself accountable for. And it becomes a standards game, and those standards will ripple through the organization to all individual contributors and all teams. So it's less about the individual parts of leadership in terms of how you lead. It's more the framework of leadership.
Dave, you just mentioned frameworks there. When you say framework, what specifically are you talking about, and how might someone go about building or creating or finding a framework to use to deliver the outcomes that we're talking about here?
Absolutely. So I think many of us will have been in organizations before where they've put you on, some form of sales training or a leadership course, and it's kind of point in time, right? So bang, you're in 2 or 3 days and you come away with this kind of, wow, that was brilliant. I learned all these things. Okay, right, back to work. And all the things kind of get thrown out, right? I'm a big believer in taking a piece of knowledge, creating a set of accountabilities around a piece of knowledge, and then practicing it over a period of time. And a group of people going on that journey together where you're doing a little bit of learning, you're agreeing what your practice is going to look like, and then you're spending 4 weeks or so practicing an individual part of leadership, which you're seeing the benefits of. And I was looking for a training program which kind of did that, but it wasn't come in and do training and then leave. It was like a good 12-month mentoring coaching program that drove those outcomes. And I stumbled across something from the Breakthrough Company, which is awesome. So I can't remember the website address, but if you Google the Breakthrough Company, and it's a 12-month long program which economically is really quite attainable, to join. And the way it works is, as a leader or an aspirational leader, there are 12 modules that you go through, and it's all the constituent parts of what we know are hard for people to sort out, both professionally as a leader and as a knowledge worker, right? So things like prioritizing and managing your time, things like time on yourself and big thinking, things like how to work with others, how to set genuine priorities versus other people's work, how to stay accountable and active, or how to maintaining active management versus passive management, all of these things. There's 12 pieces, 12 months. And the style of the framework is you spend 10% of your time learning. So it's like 2 hours a month, something like that, 2 hours a month, which is like some online training, which is the core walkthroughs of the practice. So let's take an example of time management. So it's 2 hours on benefits of time management, how to time manage, strategies, the importance of it, how to hold people accountable if they're messing around with your time and capacity, all that kind of stuff. You then do group training, which is the next 10%. So you're getting together with your peers and going, right, this is how we're going to implement some strategies or change how diaries work or whatever to break these things in. And then the rest of the 80% of the time is all just practicing it. So any meeting you're turning up to with your peers, you know the standard, you know what to expect, and you know that you need to be there 5 minutes early, and you know that if anyone's 1 minute late, that they're not allowed in the room. All these things. Get to the end of the month, realize the value, and then move on to the next module. And every quarter, get together, what worked, what didn't work. And for me, the framework of that 12-month program to go, these are the standards that Umbrella holds ourselves to, because that's how we want to run the company, filters all that training goes actually down into the organization, because the leaders are the ones setting up all these meetings in the first place and setting the standard.
Yeah.
So the Breakthrough Company, really good framework. Cost to benefit, like it's great on the basis that actually all of the onus is on you to do the training, not someone sat in the front of a classroom telling you how to do it, which is great.
Yeah.
So every leader that joins Umbrella is put onto the active management program from the Breakthrough Company. 12 months mentorship along the way. Mentors are in the program with you, doing the program. They're not counselors, not the right word, but they're available on speed dial to like, hey, look, I've got this situation. What tools can I use to kind of pull this together? And it's been great for us. Really has been really, really positive.
Awesome. Look, that's fantastic, because one of the things that I've found is that there's this thing called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, which you may or may not have heard of, but basically when you learn something, when you get taught something, within a very, very short space of time, 80% of it's gone, and it's within hours, if not days. And how you turn that round is actually to implement, not just take the knowledge, but to then go and implement the knowledge and practice and learn it. And this sounds like a really powerful way to go about doing that, which is cool. So that's really fantastic. Thanks. And anyone that's listening to this, perhaps go and have a look at that, because that sounds like an awesome program to put into an organization to help build the framework. So thanks, Dave. That's been awesome. Just before we wrap up, Dave, is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have?
No, it's a good question. I guess I actually did have a little bit of pre-thinking about this, but it's been great, because this kind of interview's gone a different way from which I expected, and that's always a positive thing. I guess one thing that what I would ask myself is, where do you go from here as an experienced leader? Because I would consider myself still inexperienced, right? Yes, I'm 20 years in the industry, but I'm still only 36. I've got a lot of miles left yet to run. Is that, as an experienced or semi-experienced leader, where do you go from here to continue developing?
Right. So pretend I've asked you that question.
Okay. So where do I go from here? Look, I find this one really quite challenging, because when you're a kid, right, and you're like, oh, when I get to 20, I'll feel like an adult.
Yeah.
When I get to 25, I'll feel like an adult. I'm like, well, when's adulthood gonna land, right? And then you realize very, very quickly when you get to like 30 or so that everyone's making this up, right? And it's only the things that have preceded them that give them the experience. But wherever you're at in the journey, whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50, everyone is making it up. right? They're just leveraging the lessons that went before them. So no one at that point in time knows the job. Jacinda Ardern lands in the PM seat, 36 years old or whatever. She's not done that before.
Yeah.
Go figure it out. And it's the same with, I guess where I'm at now, but any one of you that's listening who's looking at wanting to be in leadership or drive a certain way, just do the work and the experience will come. You every day that you smash away at the coalface, you're going to get some form of experience from it, which is going to help. And do the work. The mahi never stops, right? And we're going to keep going. And I think that's one. And I actually asked it. One of my team asked me not recently. They were like, "Cool, so I've got this aspiration. How do I get there?" And the answer was, "Well, just go and get there, because you can, right? If you make the asks, you prove your worth, you show you're up to the task, the opportunities will come for you.
Yeah.
No one's going to sit there and give it to you on a silver plate. You've got to go and get it."
Yeah. Brilliant. Hey, that's great. Reminds me of a couple of things. One is, or a couple of quotes. One is that experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. When things don't work out, that's when that's what experience really is, right? It's when stuff goes wrong, that's when you really learn. When stuff's going right, you don't tend to learn a whole lot, and a lot of it may have to do with luck rather than necessarily your brilliant ability to do things. And the other one, which I really like, is that you're making it up. And there's a Ricky Gervais quote that says, "Just remember," something that goes something like, and I'm probably going to botch it, but just remember, if no one else has any idea what they're doing either. So we're all making it up as we go along, which is what experience is all about, and it's all about learning, getting at the coalface and breaking the coal off from the coalface and learning stuff. So, Dave, that's been fantastic. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed the interview. I never know where they're going to go, but it's been a great one. And thanks for all your insight and engagement and actionable ideas that people can take away that have been listening and watching.
All good. And thank you for the invite as well. I appreciate your time.
Brilliant. Well, look, we'll have to have you back on the show at some point, Dave. But in the meantime, thanks very much, and we'll catch up soon.
You want to?
Thanks for listening. If you have a friend or a colleague who would benefit from this episode, please pass the word along. If you have a friend or a colleague who would not benefit, but you haven't been in touch with them for a while, give them a call. iTunes reviews are great to get the word out and to help me create the show that's most useful for you. And if you're frustrated or having challenges or would like some help, guidance, assistance with your first leadership role, then check out integrationcatalyst.com in the link in the podcast notes below. Or pass this on to your boss to nudge them to get you the help you really need to cross the doing to managing chasm and get you powered up on your leadership and management journey. Oh, and if you want to make sure you don't miss an episode, hit subscribe. Until next time.